So in this class, we're going to talk about distributions, the different types. And so we know in typical markets, like we want to buy at one level and sell at the other. Like if you're at a lemonade stand and you're a 9-year-old, you want to buy the lemonade, all of the ingredients and all the material needed for the lemonade stand for like $5 to $10. And you want to sell that lemonade per cup for like $1. So after 5 cups or 10 cups of sold lemonade, you broke even, and now everything else is profit. And we know once we have the lemonade stand built and the recipe done, that the only thing we have to do is keep up with the material, the cups and the lemonade, and we can continue collecting profit. And based off of the time of day, we know if it's hot, we're probably going to charge more for the lemonade than if it's cold. And we know that there's going to be a demand for that lemonade. And if you're the only lemonade dealer in the neighborhood, and you live in a neighborhood full of people exercising or whatever, being active, you know that they're going to pay more at your lemonade stand than because you're convenient. The market's not different. Now, let's say you're not the only lemonade stand in the neighborhood, but there's like grocery stores 30 miles from your house, but there's like 5 lemonade dealers in your neighborhood. So now you have to use your price to be competitive and as an advertisement. So if you're the only supplier of lemonade, you can afford to charge more. But if you're not the only supplier of lemonade in the neighborhood, then you have to be competitive with your prices. The market is no different than that in theory. And the cool thing about the market nowadays is we don't have to sit there and overanalyze price and write it down. And we have technology, and whoever can organize the information using that technology wins and can understand what is happening in the market. So we use TPO charts to help us organize that information and to collect the data so we know where the market is, if it's cheap or if it's not cheap within value. And we use this by using this bell-shaped curve. However, it's not the holy grail because there's different variables. And we know that the bell-shaped curve gives us the value of whatever we're measuring through time and price. And on one end of the curve is where it's cheap. On the other end, it's not cheap. And in the middle, it's within value. And this lets us determine where the market is in the business model of wholesale. Okay, so now we must realize that the typical bell-shaped curve is the perfect scenario, and there's no context behind what is happening with it. No matter what you use to figure out and make your prediction on where the market's going to go, you have to have the context and the thought process to filter between all of the information that you have collected. We know that in the stock market, price is an advertisement to get people to be comfortable spending their money, and that's that. So I've talked time and time again about the business model of wholesale is to buy the position, and no matter how many charts we pull up, we see it time and time again, right? And we know that the job of wholesale is to buy as much inventory as they can in a position to take the market up once they have the position built, to place a big bid to prevent it from going below that level, to sell off what they have once the order flow of buying has subsided or slowed down. And then once they sold their position and buyers don't want to buy anymore and the ducks aren't quacking anymore, then they will do a stop run to sell the bid that they used to hold it up, and then they'll bring it back down until they find buyers who are attracted in a sized manner to buy again. And they do this repeat, and it doesn't matter what chart you look at, what time frame. This is the context that you always have to maintain in the back of your mind. If there's supply, they're bringing the market down to get rid of that supply, to find buyers for that supply. If there's no supply, that means they bought up all the supply and they're taking it higher to sell it. So we already know what the regular distribution curve bell shape looks like and how that goes. So now let's look at one shape that we often see. All right, so we see the B shape, right? So as you can see, the value area of the B shape is the lowercase b, right? And usually what's happening here is supply is opening up and they move the market down to a level where they found buyers, and so they want to build the position, just take it back up higher. Or what's happening in that B shape is the people who shorted the market up high are buying it back at the value area of the B shape, which is known as short covering. When a short position buys to close their position, that's called short covering. So usually in the B shape, that's what we see. We see this position to take it higher being built, and the people who shorted the market on the way down, the smart ones at least, that's where they're covering. The dumb ones continue adding to the short position, and then we get to the next profile, which is known as the P shape. And the P shape is usually when they're taking their inventory higher to sell it at a higher price. And remember the B shape when I said the smart short sellers are covering and closing their positions for a profit. The dumb ones are adding too. Well, the P shape is a direct reflection of a short position at the bottom of the distribution. So the reason the P shape exists is because there's more demand than supply under the bottom of the P where the skinny part starts. Just like a lowercase b shape, there's more supply than there is demand, and they're buying up all the supply, right? So if we know that there's a short position at the stem of the P, then we know that's where the bid's going to be, because there's a seller who bought something he didn't own, and he's trying to buy it back in that area. All right, so you're buying in front of the big buyer and selling before the big seller sells. So how do we take this simple distribution curve and tie it all together with the context of the business model of wholesale, knowing what type of market we're in and how wholesale transacts, or let this market profile give us an edge like no other? So let's start tying it together. All right, so when we see multiple profiles with the value areas going higher, we know that there's no supply in the market. When we see gaps and weak, lows, we know not to short the market, right? It doesn't get more simpler than that. You don't need a DOM, you don't need signals, but you can use them to build your confidence. Anything that gives you the confidence that you need, use it. But this is the way I have been able to effectively trade using market. And because I sat there and listened to JJ mentor us and teach us this, I was able to tie it all together with a chart like. So this is 8 days, and we're going to start left to right. And we know that the first day to the left, which is red, we know that they're selling the position that they bought lower, and the next day that is gray because it's neutral day and it's still within value of the previous day, we know that that is them still selling. And then they take it down to day 3. Well, they first, on the neutral day, day 2, they run it up to sell the big ass bid that they held the market up with and make a profit on that. And then on day 3 and the end of day 2, they start, and overnight during Globex, they bring it back down, they build the position, dummies short the market at the bottom, and it rips up into a P shape. They sell with, on day 4, they sell what they bought on day 3, and then price sticks, and they continue, they rinse and repeat all over again. So what does price sticking look like? Well, if you look in this chart, the orange is Globex, and they bought the position. The next day, which is the gray, they sold the position, and price stuck above that level. And if you look at the next Globex session, at the end of the day, actually midday, while they were selling, they were buying the position higher, and then they continue to take it up higher to sell it, because the order flow supported them to allow price to be accepted at that level. If they have buyers, they're just going to keep on taking it up and selling it higher, taking it up, selling it higher. So now let's talk about how we can see market tempo and order flow within just these market profiles. So if you look here, we're going down the first 3 days of these profiles, going from left to right, but it looks like regular distribution and regular distribution day 2 with a lot more downside. Then it looks like a trend day to the downside, and then we finally reject and we get a P shape from where people shorted the market at the lows. And then as you can see, we're not getting P shapes so much going up until the last 2 days. That shows us that it's just a steady order flow going back up to do what they do. Just because the order flow isn't there doesn't change the principle of what business model of Wholesale is, which is why I really am trying to hit up, just because you get a P-shaped looking thing going down, you have to put what is happening in context. Now let's look at this chart. This is more of a long range chart, and this is the chart that you can tie everything that's happening in the market as we're going down. We see majority of the time spent. If you look at the second to the last day, you see majority of the time spent was above, right? At the top of the distribution. So what is that telling us? That on that big dip, right where the circle is, the day before that circle, they bought the position there, and it's taken them that much time, those 3 days at the top, to sell the position, and now they're going to bring it back down. Don't overthink this. Always remember the context. Don't think that it has to go from value area low to value area high, and it has to do this, and it has to do that. Listen, the only thing it has to do is the agenda that they dictated that it's going to do. There's no indicator, no chart that is going to get inside the mind of the people placing this size trades. Hopefully this helped. Remember, put it all in context. Later.